Hello there, welcome to lesson number 2 in our series on using FluidDesigner for 3D printing to create rings. In today's lesson we're going to show you how you can create a ring using a Bezier curve which is linked to a Bezier circle. So if we start off FluidDesigner, your opening screen should look something like this. We need to go to Learning Projects, Jewellery Projects, Rings. We're doing lesson 02, so we can drag and drop this object onto the workspace. I'm just going to start the screencast key, so any key presses I might make should be displayed in the panel there. And what have we got here? Well, this is what we're trying to create, this ring. And we're going to try and create it out of this combination of a Bezier curve, that's the blue line on the left hand side, and we can add Bezier curves to the workspace by going to Add Curve and Bezier, and that Bezier curve has been linked to this Bezier circle. The grey area here, the grey object, is a Bezier circle, but it's a Bezier circle that's linked to this. Now you don't have to worry about linking it. If you just refresh the screen with Group Library, if you go to 3D Templates Cross Sections, this first item in here, the circle cross section Blender file, that object is in fact essentially the same as this one. So there's a template file there for you to use. As long as you don't save on top of it and delete it, that template file is always there for you to drag and drop onto the workspace, and you can modify it. And in this instance we're going to show you how you can modify it to make a ring. So if we just go to View and Front. Now one of the important things about a ring is you do want similar dimensions. You want the distance from the center of the ring to this point to be the same as the distance from the center of the ring to this point, and the same on the other side. And a way to do that in FluidDesigner is to switch on the snap feature, so and to select increment. Now what that means is that when we try and move this control point, it will only snap to increments on the grid, and at the moment the grid is set up in centimeters. So if we move this, we'll move 1 centimeter in, 2 centimeters in, 3 centimeters in. And if we do the same to this control point here, effectively these two control points will be the same distance from the z-axis. The blue line in the middle of the screen is the z-axis. So that's 1 centimeter there. That's also 1 centimeter, and it's also a centimeter on the other side. So the dimensions of this hole at the moment are that it is a diameter of 2 centimeters or 20 millimeters, and that's best done with the snap feature. So the snap feature will also work on this control point here, so we can bring this in. Okay, if you look now, the height of this object is quite a bit bigger than the finished one, so I could move that down and move that up. Now it's looking fairly similar to this now. It's not exactly the same, but it's looking fairly similar. So at the moment the settings for this ring are that distance there is 1 centimeter. We can see that from the grid. Also, if we look up at this table here, if I select that control point, X value, the red arrow is the X value. So this point here is at point -10. Minus just means to the left of the z-axis. If I select, well, I can't select the control point on the other side. This point here is +10, so that's 10 millimeters to the right. -10 is 10 millimeters to the left. So this is 2 centimeters or 20 millimeters diameter. Now if that's the size of the ring that we want, we can leave it at that. And if we just go to View and Front, that's okay. If we want a slightly bigger internal diameter for our ring, let's say we want a ring that's say 24 millimeters diameter, we can zoom in, and at this point we change from centimeters to millimeters. So now I can move this 2 millimeters. So X value is now -12, which means that the diameter, the internal diameter of this top part of the ring is now twice this, so it's 24 millimeters. And I can do the same on the bottom, so that these 2 points are the same distance from the center. in millimeters. We could bring this one in as well and make it less pronounced. Okay, so that's now looking much more like the finished product at the top there. Okay, now once we're happy with the size, okay, what we need to do is to come out of edit mode. So press the tab key on the keyboard to come out of edit mode, and then highlight the main body of the object, the ring itself, and we need to convert this now. Currently it is a curve. We can't print curves, we've always got to convert them to meshes. So the way to convert it to a mesh is to go to Tools, Object Tools, and convert it to a mesh. And if I just zoom in now, and if I try and select the Bezier curve on the left hand side there, and let me just open up this panel to just check. That's the Bezier curve that's highlighted. If I click on the main body of the ring, you'll see it switches to Bezier circle. If I highlight the Bezier curve on the left hand side, this is what we were using to adjust this ring. If I now go back into tab mode and try and move this, you'll see that it doesn't have any effect on the ring. They're not connected anymore. Once I've converted this to a mesh, they're no longer connected. So if I just come out of edit mode by pressing the tab key, I can actually delete this now. So if I press X on the keyboard with the Bezier curve highlighted, that will make it disappear. Now our ring at the moment, it is a mesh, but it's got no thickness. You'll see that the finished object has got some thickness to it. Our ring at the moment has got no thickness, and we can add thickness to objects by using a modifier, a solidify modifier, and we do that in the properties window by going to the modifiers icon. That's this spanner here, and with the ring highlighted, the new ring highlighted, if we go to add modifier and solidify modifier, and if I just zoom in here, you'll see what happens. Thickness at the moment, if I change this to 1 millimeter, you can see it's applying some thickness to the object. Now it's applying it on the inside. Now because I set that inside to be 24 millimeters internal diameter, I don't want any thickness applied on the inside. And what's applying it on the inside is this offset value of -1. It offsets the thickness from the center. So in other words, this is the center, this is where it starts off. -1 will offset it on the inside in this case. The way to offset it on the outside is to change this value to +1. So you'll see now when I apply the thickness is going on the outside of the object. Now 2 millimeters is sufficient thickness for a ring. We should have an internal diameter now of 24 millimeters. To apply this thickness, we've always got to go to Tools, Object Tools, and convert it to a mesh again. Once we do that, we won't be able to modify it with that modifier. It's confirmed it now. So there's our ring. If we just go to View and view it from the top, we can scroll in there, and if I just go across the toolbar, there is a interactive ruler, so I should be able to measure the internal diameter of this. It's a bit larger than I thought it was. It's 26 millimeters at the moment. Okay, that's not a problem. If we want to modify this and bring it down to 24 millimeters, what we can do is if we just go to View and view it from the top again, and if we actually add a cylinder to the workspace and just go to show the main information icon, if I want an internal diameter of 24 millimeters, I can type 24 mm for millimeters as the X value and 24 mm as the Y value. So that's now put a cylinder in there that's exactly 24 millimeters diameter. So if I highlight my ring now, I can scale down the size of this ring. And we can scale in FluidDesigner by pressing S on the keyboard. Now before I do that, I'm going to move the mouse right out here to the bottom right hand corner, because the position of the mouse does affect how things scale. So if I do S for scale, and as I move the mouse in, you'll see that it changes scale. Now at the moment it's jumping in increments according to the grid. So I need to cancel that with the escape key. And what I want to do is I want to switch off my snap. The snap is meaning that I can't adjust this easily. I can only adjust it in snap increments. So if I try that again, highlight the ring, move the mouse down to the bottom right hand corner, press S on the keyboard, and if I just move it in now, you'll see it's not snapping anymore. And I can adjust it until it just fits around that cylinder, and then I'll click the left mouse button to apply that size now. Now whenever you scale in FluidDesigner, you will always in the toolbox, and I've just pressed the plus sign there to open up the toolbox, these vector sizes won't be values of 1, which is what they should be. So always when you scale in FluidDesigner, you always need to do Control A and apply the scale, and that will set the scale back to 1. So that's something you've always got to try and remember to do in FluidDesigner. Now if I click on this cylinder and delete it, there's my ring now. It's got an internal diameter of 24 millimeters, and it's got a thickness of 2 millimeters. And so now what I can do, whoops, don't want that window open. I want to delete this original object by pressing X on the keyboard and deleting it. This is the one that the ring that we've created today. And what we want to do is to save that. So if we go to File, and always remember to go to Save As in FluidDesigner. Don't save it in the Learning Projects folder. Just come up through the menu system, go to My Projects, Jewellery Projects, Rings, and you can save O2 as a Bezier ring, and you save that as a Blender file. Now we can't print Blender files, so what we want to do is we want to export it. We like to save it as a wavefront OBJ file. This is a printable file format, and I'm going to save it to the desktop. So it's Lesson 02 Bezier ring. Export it to the desktop, and then go to Netfab Basic. We always need to check our meshes in Netfab Basic, so if we go to Project and Open, go to the desktop and open O2 Bezier ring. There's the ring that we've created. Now we haven't got a warning red triangle, so that's a good sign, but it's always the case. We always recommend you go to Extras and repair the part. Netfab Basic will have made some changes to this mesh. It will have put in all these lines here, changing it from rectangles to triangles. Now if I just move Netfab across and click Update, you see there are no border edge problems, no orientations and no holes, but still just run automatic repair. It only takes a second, and apply the repair and remove the old part, and you can then save that. So if you go to Part, Export Part as a wavefront object, you can export it to the desktop as O2 Bezier ring repaired. Okay, and that's the file that you should print. Now if I just pop back to FluidDesigner for a moment, if I just go to File and Open Recent, if I just open up that Blender file again, whoops, no, sorry, not recent, I want to go to the second one down, that's the original one. There is an alternative way of actually doing this lesson, and that is, instead of using the snap and instead of dragging the control points, you can simply type in the values that you want here. So if you know that you want a ring that's 24 millimeters internal diameter, half of 24 is 12, so you can simply enter in minus. Minus just means it's to the left of the z-axis, so minus 12 millimeters. That will position the control point. Similarly, we can do the same for that control point, minus 12 millimeters. And then, you know, you can modify this one. Let's see, that's minus, so we could say that that's minus 15 millimeters. So you just get that curve. Now these 2 points here also need moving inwards. So we can change the Y value. The Y value is this height here. We can change that one to say 10 millimeters. And this Y value, well, it's minus 20 at the moment. You can change that to minus 10 millimeters. So you could use this transform panel, this control points here, to exactly size the points to create your ring, if you know the dimensions that you want. However, we would always advise that after you've changed this to a mesh, after you've add a modifier, so I'm just adding a 2mm thickness to the outside of the ring. After you've done that, you do always need to recheck the internal diameter, and if it's not quite right, you can always scale it. Okay, so you can drag the control points, or you can using the snap feature as we've shown you, or you could enter in values into the control point box there. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. Thank you.